commotion over radical Islam entered through the youth of good-looking. Read this to understand what is really going on. By Saifullah al-Maslul. The short-term goal of this war must be to destroy militant Islam, but the long-term goal of this war is the modernization of Islam. Daniel Pipes. In 2004, Daniel Pipes, the founder of the Middle East Forum, who is also known as the mastermind behind the Islamophobia movement, wrote an article entitled, "Rand Corporation and Fixing Islam." In his writing, Pipes said he was happy. His hope of modifying Islam was translated into a strategy by Rand Corporation researcher Cheryl Bernard. Bernard calls this mission religious building, an effort to build an alternative Islamic religion. Bernard admitted that this mission was very dangerous and complex, far more frightening than the nation-building mission. Meanwhile, Pipes analogizes this mission as an attempt to enter into uncharted territory. "This is something that has not been tried before," he wrote. Previously, Cheryl Bernard, who was of Jewish blood, had sparked the idea of turning Islam into a religion that is passive and submits to the US government. A series of strategies were devised and written down. He explained his concept in a book entitled Civil Democratic Islam, Partners, Resources, and Strategies. They want to change Islam, because its pure teachings will not allow non-Muslims to control Muslims, their resources, their land, or their wealth. For them this is a big problem. Tit for tat. President George W. Bush Jr. welcomed the strategy. Khilafah is one of the teachings in Islam that they beat. In a speech in September 2006, Bush stated, "They hope to build a violent political utopia in the Middle East, which they call the Khilafah. This Khilafah will become a totalitarian Islamic empire covering all Muslim territories, both present and past, stretching from Europe to North Africa, the Middle East to the Southeast Asia." Not only that, in the same speech, Bush also vowed that he would not let the caliphate stand. "I will not let this happen. And no future American president will ever let it be either." Quote, "If the US is able to prevent the creation of a caliphate, control oil and other energy resources in the Islamic world, then, as a result, they will have the power to impose its policies across the oil-dependent world." Bennett's mission was part of the War on Terror, a war that President George W. Bush and then Secretary of State Colin Powell said was synonymous with the Crusades. "This crusade, this war on terrorism will take a long time. And the American people must be patient. I will be patient," Bush said in a 2001 speech. In 2004, in a conversation with Pakistan's then President, Pervez Musharraf, Powell said, "I called President Musharraf and said, 'We need your answers now. We need you as part of this campaign, this crusade.'" Rand Corp's Islam. The question is, can America convince Muslims around the world to accept this Rand-style Islam? Not. The Rand Corporation has also acknowledged this. They believe that Muslims have lost faith in America. The US lost the war of ideas in the Islamic world, failing to promote its policies to Muslims who are wary of American hypocrisy and intent, according to Pentagon advisors. Therefore, Rand Corp stated that in this program America's hands must be hidden. Meanwhile, carefully selected Muslim puppets must be at the forefront of ushering in this new version of Islam. So who will become a doll in Rand Corp's style of Islam? For them, the ideal partners to undertake this work would be Muslims, in the Muslim community who would work in America's interests. Rand labeled them modernists, moderates. The characteristic of this modernist group, according to Bernard, is the desire to modernize and reform Islam so that it is in line with the times. Then, how are they able to carry out the mission of the US government? First, Rand recommended that Muslims who understand true Islam and want to implement Islamic Sharia be removed, labeling them as fundamentalists and extremists, cowards and troublemakers. Rand advises America to discredit and insult true followers of Islam. After getting rid of the fundamentalist group, the US will appoint modernists as role models and leaders of Islam. They give support to the modernists, whatever they ask, among other things by controlling the education system, funding, media coverage, so that the modernists can remove the obstacles that impede American domination. Rand suggests, create role models and leaders from among modernists. They must be nurtured and presented publicly as the face of contemporary Islam. Modernists who are at risk of persecution because of their desecration and betrayal must be built, in their image, as brave civil rights leaders. Publish and distribute their work for a fee. Encourage them to write for the community and youth. Introduce their views into the Islamic education curriculum. Give them a stage in public. Make their opinions and judgments on fundamental questions of religious interpretation available to the public, in competition with fundamentalists and traditionalists, who have websites, publications, schools, institutes and many other vehicles to spread their views. For a long-term strategy, Rand suggested that these modernist puppets be able to make young Muslims embrace secularism, be proud of their non-Islamic and pre-Islamic history, through school curricula and other media. Thus, the concepts of Sharia, jihad, and the correct caliphate will be corrupted in the minds of Muslim youth, even making them hate and stay away from them. To achieve this goal, Rand also suggested that the US government support the development of mass organizations that can be utilized. The next generation of Muslims can be influenced if the message of democratic Islam can be incorporated into the school curricula and public media in the countries concerned, position secularism and modernism as counter options for dissatisfied Muslim youth. Facilitate and promote awareness of their pre-Islamic and non-Islamic history and culture, in the media and curricula of the countries concerned. Assist in the development of independent civil society organizations to promote a civic culture. Islam Nusantara. If we look at Indonesia, all of these strategies have been and are being implemented. But, is there any other strategy? Yes, of course there is. Rand also recommended a split in the Islamic world by creating a nationalistic version of Islam for certain countries. Develop Western Islam, German Islam, US Islam, and others. This requires a better understanding of the composition, practices and thinking that are developing in these communities. Assist in bringing out, expressing, and codifying their views. 13 years later, in March 2016 to be precise, the strategy to implement it in Southeast Asia was again being discussed in Semarang. Several experts were invited to formulate it. The participants were from Indonesia, Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, to the Philippines. From Indonesia, attended the Wahid Institute and Ma'arif Institute. The recommendations from the forum were outlined in a report entitled Counter-Narratives for Countering Violent Extremism (CVE) in Southeast Asia, released by the Hidayah Center, a think tank based in the United Arab Emirates that was born on the initiative of a UK-led global forum. The report recommends 3 teachings in Islam that should be modified, namely the Caliphate, Jihad, and Al-Wala, Wal-Bara. Modification of Islamic teachings is not only done by changing the definition. The US also suggested that the use of some Islamic terms should be avoided, such as jihad, Sharia, and the Ummah as written in a report released by the US Homeland Security Advisory Council in 2016. Apart from that, another recommendation is to develop Islam in the local context. Indonesian Islam, not Islam in Indonesia. The narrative that is put forward is the narrative of tolerance and pluralism, and that Islam is the same as other religions. To build this local Islamic identity, among others, by developing sermon material in a local context that emphasizes the themes of tolerance, peace, women's rights, and so on. More detailed recommendations were released in August 2016 under the title, Undermining Violent Extremist Narratives in Southeast Asia, a How-To Guide. The report contains a more practical guide in implementing the above strategy. The main targets of this project are youth and women. In order for messages and narratives to spread more effectively, they suggested using religious figures who could be mobilized to spread this alternative Islam. For the media of its dissemination, it is carried out by using social media, television, film, radio, print media, comics, books, to discussion activities. Islamophobia scenario. Finally, as additional information, in his book entitled Islamophobia and the Politics of Empire, Professor Deepa Kumar describes 2 Islamophobic scenarios which, in her opinion, have their roots in Pope Urban's narrative at the time of the Crusades. At that time, the Pope built a narrative that depicted Islam and the Prophet Muhammad in such a bad way. This was done to mobilize European citizens to want to do crusades and to prevent them from converting to Islam. Kumar explains it in terms of conservative Islamophobia and liberal Islamophobia. The term conservative Islamophobia may be familiar to us. These are those who view Islam as intrinsically a bad religion, an enemy of modernity, freedom and the like. While liberal Islamophobia, explained Kumar, is labeled to those who appear in softer rhetoric, although it is actually no less evil. They share the existence of good Muslims and bad Muslims. Good Muslims are Muslims who want to work for the West. Kumar analogizes the liberal Islamophobic approach as colonialism in sheep's clothing. So, if today we encounter so many industrial phenomena of hatred in Islam and its teachings, to various degrees, there is no need to be surprised. There is a very large, multi-billion-dollar global scenario that is currently underway, in the aftermath of the hundreds of years of hatred that began with the Crusades in the past. The question is, where are we at?